After his wife left, he hired a nanny and installed cameras. What he found shocked him. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Lucas stood in his mansion, staring blankly through the large glass windows as heavy rain cascaded down outside, a fitting reflection of the storm raging inside him. The grand estate, once the symbol of his success and happiness, felt cold and hollow now. The empty silence of the mansion was only interrupted by the soft, fragile cries of his newborn son in the next room, cries that reminded Lucas of just how much his life had changed in a few short months. Lucas had once believed that his life was perfect. He had everything he ever wanted: a thriving business, a loving wife, and now, a child. But as the cracks in his seemingly perfect world started to show, everything fell apart. His wife, Sophie, once the love of his life, had left him shortly after their son's birth. Her abrupt departure had shattered the last remaining pieces of his heart, and Lucas had been left to pick up the fragments while caring for a sick child. The doctors still hadn't figured out what was wrong with his son. It was a rare genetic condition, something they couldn't fully explain. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that his wealth and power meant nothing now. No amount of money could save his son from the illness that was threatening his young life. And even though Sophie's infidelity had been the breaking point, Lucas had to admit that her departure had left a gaping hole in his life. Now, the mansion he had once proudly called home felt more like a prison, trapping him in a constant state of despair. With each passing day, Lucas grew more desperate. His business associates noticed the change in him. He was no longer the sharp, confident man he once was. He was distracted, weighed down by the burden of his personal life. The stress of caring for a sick child on his own was too much for him to bear, but there was no one left to help. Sophie had made sure of that when she walked away. In his desperation, Lucas knew he needed someone to help take care of his son. That's when Anna entered their lives. She came highly recommended, calm, professional, with years of experience as a nanny. From the moment she walked through the doors of the mansion, she exuded a sense of peace and confidence that Lucas hadn't felt in a long time. There was something almost soothing about her presence, as if she knew exactly what he and the baby needed without him having to say a word. Anna was unlike anyone Lucas had ever met. She had a quiet strength about her that intrigued him. There was no hesitation in her voice when she assured him that she could handle the challenges of caring for his son. But as she cradled the baby in her arms, a flicker of something passed across her face, something Lucas couldn't quite place. It was as though she was fighting back her own emotions, keeping them buried deep inside. But in the back of his mind, Lucas wondered if there was more to Anna's story than she was letting on. Days turned into weeks, and Anna quickly became an integral part of Lucas's household. She devoted herself fully to the care of his son, and Lucas couldn't deny that she was doing a remarkable job. She seemed to know exactly what the baby needed, and her gentle nature brought a sense of calm to the otherwise chaotic household. Lucas watched from the sidelines, grateful for her presence but also battling a growing sense of unease. Despite Anna's dedication, Lucas's past haunted him. Sophie's betrayal had left deep scars, and trust didn't come easily to him anymore. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. His mind raced with questions. Why did Anna seem so attached to his son? Why did she spend so much time watching over him, even when he was asleep? And why did she never speak about her own past? It didn't help that the doctors continued to bring grim news about his son's condition. Every test they ran seemed to lead to more uncertainty, and Lucas felt time slipping away from him. He was terrified that his son's illness would get worse, that the one person he had left in his life would be taken from him. It was that fear combined with his lingering distrust from Sophie's betrayal that pushed Lucas to make a decision. Late one night, after pacing the halls of the mansion, unable to sleep, he decided to install hidden cameras throughout the house. He told himself it was for his son's safety, that he needed to know everything was under control while he focused on his business. But deep down, Lucas knew it was more than that. He needed to know if Anna could truly be trusted. Chapter 1: A Father's Desperation. Lucas had never imagined his life would come to this, secretly spying on the woman he had hired to help care for his child. But after what Sophie had done to him, his heart was guarded, and trust was something he couldn't give easily. As he sat in his office, reviewing the footage from the cameras, a mixture of guilt and curiosity gnawed at him. He didn't want to believe that Anna could be hiding something, but his paranoia wouldn't let him rest until he knew for sure. The cameras were discreetly placed, hidden in key areas where Anna spent most of her time with the baby. Lucas had justified the invasion of privacy to himself by saying it was necessary for his son's well-being. After all, his son's health was deteriorating, and he needed to be sure that Anna was doing everything possible to care for him properly. At first, the footage seemed perfectly normal. Anna was gentle, attentive, and endlessly patient with the baby. Lucas watched as she rocked him to sleep, sang him lullabies, and stayed by his side for hours, even when he was sound asleep. There was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that should have set off alarm bells. But Lucas's unease didn't fade. If anything, the more he watched, the more unsettled he became. There was something about the way Anna looked at his son, something deeper, more intense than just professional care. It was as though she was looking at the baby as if he were her own. Lucas dismissed the thought at first, telling himself he was reading too much into it. But the feeling lingered. It was in the way Anna would gently caress the baby's cheek, or how she would whisper to him softly, as if sharing secrets only they could understand. It was as if every moment she spent with him was filled with a quiet, unspoken bond that Lucas couldn't quite grasp. One night, as a particularly violent storm raged outside, Lucas found himself unable to sleep. The thunder echoed through the mansion's empty halls, but it wasn't the storm that was keeping him awake. It was the gnawing sense of doubt that had taken root in his mind. He sat at his desk, staring at the camera feed on his laptop, watching as Anna cradled the baby in her arms. The scene was peaceful, almost comforting, but for Lucas, it only added to the tension building inside him. He couldn't explain it, but something about Anna's presence felt too personal, too intimate. It was as if she wasn't just a nanny, there was a deeper connection there, one that Lucas couldn't ignore. He leaned closer to the screen, watching intently as Anna gently rocked the baby back and forth. Her lips moved in a soft lullaby, her voice barely audible over the sound of the storm. And then, something strange happened. Anna paused, her expression shifting as she looked down at the baby with an almost overwhelming sadness. She hesitated for a moment, as if making a decision. Before Lucas could react, Anna unbuttoned her blouse and lifted the baby to her chest. Lucas's heart raced, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. His hands trembled as he paused the footage, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. What was Anna doing? Why would she breastfeed his son without telling him? Confusion and anger surged through him as he replayed the scene in his mind. Was this why she had become so attached to the baby? Had she crossed a line that Lucas didn't even know existed? He couldn't understand what he was seeing, couldn't make sense of why Anna would do something so intimate without his knowledge. He stood up from his desk, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed answers, and he needed them now. With determination, Lucas stormed down the long corridors of the mansion, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors as he made his way toward Anna's room. His mind was racing with questions that he feared he already knew the answers to. As he reached the door, Lucas didn't bother knocking. He pushed it open, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and fear. Anna looked up from where she was sitting, still holding the baby in her arms. Her face tightened as she saw Lucas's expression, an expression that was halfway between fury and despair. The moment had come. The truth was about to be revealed. Chapter 2. The Hidden Truth. Lucas stood frozen in the doorway, the scene in front of him blurring as his mind raced to comprehend what he had just seen on the camera footage. Anna, the woman he had trusted to care for his son, was sitting by the crib, quietly buttoning her blouse, her movements slow and deliberate. She looked up at Lucas, her face calm yet filled with a deep sadness, as if she had been expecting this moment. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of confusion, anger, and disbelief surging through him. "What were you doing?" Lucas demanded, his voice strained, trying to maintain composure though he could feel it slipping. "Why were you? Why would you do that without telling me?" Anna met his gaze, her eyes filled with sorrow, yet there was no panic in her expression. She stood up, carefully placing the baby back in his crib, and turned to face Lucas. Her voice when she spoke was soft but steady. "I can explain, Lucas. But it's not what you think." "Not what I think." Lucas's frustration boiled over. "I saw you. How can you justify this? This is my child, Anna. You crossed a line one I never imagined you would." Anna took a deep breath, sensing the storm of emotions swirling inside Lucas. "I did what I did because it's not just your child, Lucas. He's mine." The words hit Lucas like a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. He stood there, stunned, unable to form a response. The room seemed to close in around him, his mind refusing to process what she had just said. What? What do you mean, yours? Anna's face softened, but the pain in her voice was unmistakable. I didn't want you to find out this way. But the truth is, the baby you've been raising as your own, he's not Sophie's child. He's mine. I gave birth to him. Lucas stumbled back, his mind spinning. This was impossible. How could the baby not be Sophie's? How could Anna have been hiding this from him all along? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you? Why would Sophie? Anna stepped forward, her eyes pleading for him to listen. Sophie couldn't have children, Lucas. She lost her baby at birth, and she was devastated. She knew that if she didn't give you a child, your marriage would fall apart, so she made me. She made me give up my baby. She threatened me, told me that if I didn't agree to her plan, I would lose everything. I had no choice. Lucas's head swam with disbelief and anger. His wife, the woman he had trusted and loved, had lied to him, had stolen another woman's child and passed him off as their own. And Anna, the woman standing in front of him, had been forced to give up her own baby to protect herself. His heart broke as the reality of the situation sank in. You're telling me Sophie knew all along? That this baby I thought was ours was never hers? Lucas's voice cracked, barely holding back the emotion rising within him. Anna nodded, her eyes welling with tears. Yes, Lucas. Sophie forced me to give up my child. I became the nanny so I could be close to him. I couldn't abandon him, even though I had to pretend he wasn't mine. Lucas sank into a chair, his legs no longer able to hold him up. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his marriage, was unraveling before his eyes. His love for his son hadn't changed, but the betrayal cut deep. And Sophie, how could she do something so cruel, so calculated? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Lucas finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid, Anna admitted. Sophie's influence still hangs over us. She's connected to dangerous people who would hurt me, hurt you, if the truth came out. I couldn't risk losing my son again. Chapter 3: A Web of Lies. Lucas spent the next few days in a fog of disbelief, barely able to function as the weight of Anna's revelation sank in. The cameras, which he had installed to protect his son, had exposed something far darker than he ever could have anticipated. He couldn't stop thinking about the lies, the betrayal, the way his entire life had been manipulated by Sophie. As he sat in his office, going over the camera footage again, a new feeling washed over him. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was resolve. He had to confront Sophie to hear her side of the story. There was no running from this now. Lucas called Sophie, his hand trembling slightly as he waited for her to answer. When she finally picked up, her voice was cold, as if she had been expecting this call. Lucas. Sophie, he said, his voice tight with barely contained anger. I know the truth. I know what you did. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Sophie sighed, as if a weight had been lifted from her. I suppose it was only a matter of time before you found out. Lucas gripped the phone tighter. How could you? How could you do this to me, to him? I didn't have a choice, Sophie replied, her voice void of any real emotion. You don't know what it was like. I couldn't bear the thought of losing everything, of you leaving me. So, yes, I did what I had to do. You stole another woman's child, Lucas shouted, unable to contain his rage any longer. You lied to me for months. You made me believe this baby was ours. Sophie's voice hardened. I did what was necessary. Don't act like you're some saint, Lucas. You wanted a perfect life, a perfect family, and I gave that to you. But you were never satisfied. Lucas was taken aback by her response, her complete lack of remorse. You don't get to play the victim here, Sophie. You ruined everything. And now I have to figure out how to protect our son from the mess you've created. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, quietly, Sophie said, I'm sorry, Lucas, but this is your problem now. I'm done with it. And with that, she hung up. Lucas stared at the phone in disbelief. Sophie had walked away again, leaving him to pick up the pieces of a life she had shattered. Chapter 4: A New Beginning. In the days following Sophie's call, Lucas found solace in Anna's presence. The shock of her confession had faded, replaced by a deep understanding between them. She had been through her own hell, forced to give up her child and live a lie, all to protect her son. And now, as they stood together, Lucas realized that his bond with Anna had grown stronger than he ever could have imagined. Sophie's betrayal had destroyed one life, but in its wake, Lucas had found a new sense of purpose, a new family. He looked at Anna, holding their son, and knew that together they could rebuild. The mansion, once a symbol of his shattered past, now felt like a place of healing and hope. But there was still a darkness looming. The people Sophie had been involved with were dangerous, and Lucas knew that simply walking away wouldn't be enough. They had to protect their son, no matter the cost. One evening, as the sun set over the estate, Lucas and Anna sat together in the nursery, watching their son sleep peacefully. Anna leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder, and for the first time in months, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," Lucas said softly, his voice filled with a mix of sadness and hope. Anna smiled gently. "Neither did I, but we'll get through this, together." Lucas nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude and love for the woman who had stood by him through it all. "I know we will." And as the night settled in, Lucas realized that despite the lies and betrayal that had nearly destroyed him, he had found something far more important, something real. A family born not from deceit, but from love, trust, and the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 5: A Battle to Protect What Matters Most. The calm that had settled over Lucas's mansion was temporary, like the stillness before a storm. While Lucas and Anna had found solace in each other's company and the love for their son, they both knew that the threat from Sophie's past still loomed. The people she had been involved with, the ones who had pushed her into such dark decisions, weren't going to disappear quietly. Lucas had spent the past week making preparations. He had contacted his lawyers, security experts, and anyone who could help them safeguard their lives from the criminal network Sophie had tangled herself in. He wouldn't take any chances with his son's safety. Not now, after everything that had been revealed. One night, as Lucas was reviewing security plans in his office, Anna approached him quietly. She looked tired, the weight of their situation visible in her eyes. "Lucas, we need to talk," she said softly, sitting down across from him. Lucas leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I know what you're going to say," he began, his voice weary. "But we've done everything we can to protect ourselves. The security around the house, the legal precautions, it's all in place." Anna shook her head, her expression more serious than Lucas had ever seen. "It's not enough," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "These people, they don't care about the law or security. If they want to come after us, they will. And they won't stop until they get what they want." "What do you suggest?" then Lucas asked, frustration creeping into his voice. He hated feeling helpless, especially now when so much was at stake. Anna hesitated for a moment before responding. "We need to disappear. Leave everything behind. For our son's safety, for ours. We have to go somewhere they can't find us." Lucas was silent for a long time, the weight of Anna's words settling over him like a heavy blanket. He had worked so hard to build his life here, his business, his home. But now, none of that mattered if it meant putting his son at risk. He looked at Anna, seeing the resolve in her eyes, and he knew she was right. "Where would we go?" he asked, his voice quiet. Anna reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I know a place," she said softly. "A small town far from the city. It's quiet, safe. We could start over." Lucas looked into her eyes, seeing the love and fear there. She was willing to leave everything behind for their son, for him. And suddenly Lucas realized that he was too. "All right," he agreed, his voice firm. "We'll leave. We'll start over." The decision was made, but carrying it out wasn't easy. Lucas and Anna had to act quickly, selling off assets, closing business deals, and arranging their escape in secret. They couldn't risk Sophie's connections catching wind of their plan. Days passed in a blur of preparation, and as the time to leave drew closer, the tension in the mansion grew palpable. Lucas had never felt so much anxiety in his life. Every sound, every unfamiliar face sent a jolt of fear through him. Were they being watched? Were they already too late? Finally, the day arrived. Under the cover of night, Lucas, Anna, and their son slipped away from the mansion that had once been their home. They drove in silence for hours, heading toward the small town Anna had spoken of, a place far from the life they had known. The journey was long, but Lucas felt a strange sense of peace as the miles stretched between them and the dangers of the past. As the first rays of morning light broke over the horizon, Lucas looked over at Anna, who was cradling their son in her arms. She met his gaze, offering him a tired but reassuring smile. They had made it. They were safe. for now. Chapter 6. Facing the Shadows. It had been several weeks since Lucas, Anna, and their son had settled into their new life in the small town. The peaceful village, nestled between rolling hills and quiet forests, was a world away from the chaos and danger they had left behind. Here, they could finally breathe. The town was small, almost isolated, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. It was perfect. But as much as Lucas wanted to believe they were safe, he couldn't shake the feeling that the past was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to catch up with them. One evening, as the sun set over their new home, Lucas sat on the porch, watching the sky darken. The quiet of the town should have been comforting, but it only made him more anxious. Anna came outside, their son in her arms, and sat beside him. "We've done everything we can," Anna said softly, sensing Lucas's unease. "We're safe here, Lucas. No one knows where we are." Lucas nodded, though his eyes were distant. "I know, but I can't stop thinking about Sophie's connections. The people she was involved with, they're not the kind to let things go." Anna placed a hand on his arm, squeezing gently. "We'll face whatever comes, just like we always have. Together." Just as Lucas began to relax, a sound caught his attention, the crunch of gravel beneath tires. A car was approaching their house. His heart leapt into his throat as he stood up, instinctively shielding Anna and their son. The car stopped at the end of the driveway, and for a long moment, no one stepped out. Then, the door opened and a figure emerged. It was Sophie. Lucas felt his blood run cold as Sophie approached, her face etched with a mixture of regret and fear. "Lucas," she called out, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "I need to talk to you." Lucas stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to turn her away, to slam the door on everything she had done to him and his family. But another part of him, the part that still held on to the past, hesitated. Anna stepped forward, her expression calm but guarded. "What do you want, Sophie?" she asked, her voice steady. Sophie stopped a few feet away, her eyes shifting between Lucas, Anna, and the baby in Anna's arms. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but they're coming. They know where you are." Lucas's heart sank. "Who's coming?" "The people I was involved with," Sophie said, her voice trembling. "They found out where you went. I tried to keep them off your trail, but I couldn't. They're coming, and they'll be here soon." Lucas felt a surge of panic, but Anna remained calm. "Why should we believe you?" she asked. Sophie's eyes filled with desperation. "Because I'm not here to hurt you. I came to warn you, to help you. I made a mess of everything, but I'm trying to make it right." Lucas turned to Anna, their eyes locking in a silent exchange. He didn't trust Sophie, but if what she said was true, they didn't have much time. The danger they had fled from was closer than ever. "We need to leave," Lucas said, his voice firm. "Now." Sophie nodded. "I know a way out, a place you can go where they won't find you." Lucas hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He didn't like the idea of trusting Sophie again, but they had no choice. The shadows of their past were closing in, and they had to act fast. As they gathered their things and prepared to flee once more, Lucas glanced back at Sophie. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Sophie looked at him with a sad smile. "Because despite everything, I still care about you and the baby. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to protect you. It's the least I can do." With Sophie's help, Lucas and Anna left the small town behind, setting out on the road once more. The future was uncertain, but Lucas knew one thing for sure: he would protect his family, no matter what. As the car disappeared into the night, Lucas felt the weight of his past lift, if only slightly. The road ahead was long, but with Anna by his side and their son safe in her arms, he knew they would face whatever came together. Because no matter how dark the shadows of the past were, the light of their love and resolve was brighter. Thank you for following this journey. If you've been moved by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more powerful and emotional stories.